I'm from the Speaker's Firm. Welcome and thank you for choosing to join the Empower Entrepreneurs Digital Conversations, a COVID-19 discussion hosted by EmpowerWorks. A special welcome to our keynote speaker, Mr. Bongumusa Makhathini, Chair of the Board of Directors at SABC. We have a broad representation of stakeholders joining us directly via Zoom, and they'll post their questions on the chat box. At the end of the keynote, we'll respond to as many of your questions as possible. To get a direct invite to the talks, please send your details to 082 088 5262. Or you can also visit the EmpowerWorks website, www.empowerworks.co.za, where you can also get information around empowerment, empower women, empower youth, speakers firm, leadership summits, and other events. We are live on all the EmpowerWorks digital platforms, including YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and the website. And the hashtag that we've been following with these conversations is Empower Entrepreneurs. As I normally say, COVID-19 has changed the world, and we look to a public broadcaster to make sure that we are informed and we are in the know. But like any other business or any other organization and entity, it must have been impacted immensely while still being expected to deliver on what its mandate is. I hand over now to Mr. Makhathini, Chair of Board of Directors at SABC. Over to you, sir.
Good evening. Thank you very much, and greetings to everyone who's joined us. And we are grateful for this opportunity as the SABC. I want to start here that the cornerstone of the SABC mandate is to inform, educate, and entertain millions of South Africans. And there's never been a critical time for us to do that well and efficiently and ensure that all South Africans are informed about the COVID-19 pandemic and they know what precautionary measures they need to consider to avoid the spread of the virus. So as the SABC, there's a lot that was expected of us, and we had to really lift our game to make sure that we play our role and to the fullest. And of course, COVID-19 has affected quite a number of people, and within our value chain, if you look at what has really happened, we've had a situation where, for example, our classic advertising got cancelled, where people were no longer advertising just because the companies were closed. But secondly, you've got events like sporting events that we had secured, sporting rights that we were meant to be flighting and commercializing at the same time, and those were also cancelled. But the demand for us to provide opportunities for the ministers, Minister of Health, Education, the presidency, and all other government departments, a platform to raise levels of awareness basically really was on the rise. And that affected us a lot from a financial point of view, because what then happened with that situation, you find that advertising revenues were down, and our projections there, we're looking at about over 600 million shortfall on the advertising part as a result of what we're faced with. Licensing fees, you're also projecting about 87 million rand down. Our channel carriage fees that we normally get from those who carry our channels was also down roughly by 23 million. And when you look at that aspect of displacement, just on TV alone, we would have basically have a shortfall of about 444 million rands. On radio is over 100 million. On the news side, we also have a gap of about 22 million. So in total, we projected a revenue gap as a direct result of COVID-19 and the subsequent lockdowns to be at about 1.5 billion rands. I just thought I should start there just to give you a sense of what makes up that 1.5 billion rand loss. It's a result of displacement costs, but also a result of advertising revenues not coming as initially projected. So that's how the SABC has been affected. But the other thing that we had to do, we have a 24-hour news channel on DSTV 404, where we had also to make sure that the briefings that are done by ministers on 404 are also available on the free-to-air channels like SABC 1, 2, or 3, depending on our programming for that day. And that also meant that we were losing quite a lot of what we're meant to be doing in terms of our normal programming, but we had to up the game and play our part. So the financial loss as a result of COVID-19 is really significant for the SABC. But of course, we operate within a value chain, and in that value chain, understanding that the virus now has affected over 180 countries, so people like that are playing in the value chain, producers are affected a lot, our journalists, content creators, artists, event organizers, because what has happened because of the situation, sporting events were cancelled, some postponed, but your normal live concert also could not be done. So our artists were also affected. So when you look at the value chain, those are the people that we work with within our value chain that were significantly affected. And this is as a result of some of the guidelines that we were given around social distancing, because a lot of things we do to adhere to those guidelines, it meant that certain things were not going to happen. But of course, a situation like this, they say never waste a good crisis. It has also forced certain level of innovation and creativity. I mean, you have seen what Metro FM is doing, you know, making sure that we provide that level of entertainment and is televised. And as a result, we have our journalists and our presenters presenting and working from home, which has actually given us a new way of doing things. And I'm sure and I'm certain that some of the things that we started doing, we're not going to go back to where we were before COVID-19. So it's going to really move us forward faster than we thought into the 4AR era, and some of the efficiencies that will result from the situation that we are faced with of COVID-19. What I've tried to do is to give a sense of who's affected and how it has affected us financially. And now moving to a point where some of these losses or gaps are as a result of where we were from an innovation, from a technology, and from the ways of working. So as an entrepreneur, when you look at the picture that I'm painting, you can clearly see now that what role can we play where we have gaps for us to be able to continue getting content, though we're not able, for example, to be physically in the studio. And people have learned to use their cell phones better. I mean, this conversation that we are having, ordinarily would have had a face-to-face. Having it in the way we're having it, it's got its own advantages, of course, with own disadvantages. But at the end of the day, we as the SABC, we're at the point where we have to play our part to make this as our new norm and be comfortable with the uncomfortability that comes or is presented by the situation that we face with. So in a nutshell, that's basically how we've been affected, who's been affected, and what are some of the innovation that we've seen coming up as a result of the situation. Of course, in our own journey as the SABC, we want to get to a point where we have our own OTT platforms where we can benefit a lot from the advertising that comes as a result of our own content being consumed in other platforms. I mean, if you look at YouTube, there's a lot of our content on YouTube, but we're not able to benefit, to the maximum when it comes to advertising revenues, because about maybe 80 to 70% of that money leaves the country. So what can we do as innovators, as entrepreneurs, to make sure that we are able to keep as much money within the borders of this country and we are able to provide solutions with the situation we are faced with? I mean, your normal, traditional, classic advertising on TV is dwindling because people now are consuming content using other platforms. How do we make sure that we come up with innovative ways to make sure that we are able to advertise and benefit from those new channels and platforms that people are now using to engage on and to consume content? So I would like to leave it there as the opening remarks.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much, sir. There are already a lot of questions, but I'll give people an opportunity to come through. There's still quite a couple that are going to join. I'm going to undo my camera and take the privilege to ask the first questions that are coming from my side. If one looks at news in general from around the world, there seems to have been quite a heavy focus on COVID-19 at the expense of everything else. Are you concerned as the SABC that there is that over coverage of just COVID-19 at the expense of everything else?
Certainly, I am concerned that, I mean, before COVID-19, there were other conditions, there were other kind of challenges that our people were facing. But of course, there are also breaking stories that needs to be covered. And I guess we had to make do with limited resources to make sure that we raise also levels of awareness, because when the house is burning, you can't be worrying yourself about who started the fire. You've got to extinguish the fire. So it was a situation that we all had to focus on it. And if you look at how the country has done and dealt with the pandemic, it shows that there's a lot of focus and dedication by all players to really raise the level of awareness and get South Africa where it is. And I'm sure as time goes and we go down the levels, we will now start focusing on other things that have not been given the necessary attention.
Just to follow up, the news outlets did not have an opportunity to go on lockdown. They were pretty much working throughout. What measures were put in place to just make sure that everybody is safe in the work environment to be able to give us the kind of coverage that we have been the beneficiaries of sitting comfortably in our own homes?
So thank you very much for that question. Our news team has done exceptionally well. And one of the things that has happened in the last few months, SABC has become #1 news channel, which shows the dedication and the commitment and the hard work done by our people. But when the news broke about the first case of positive COVID-19 in South Africa was announced, we then did an assessment being helped by our medical aid and other HR systems that we have in place to be able to identify those of our employees that were more vulnerable that needed to work from home. and also made sure that they were provided with the protective gears to be able to do their work. But also what we've done, we had to establish a disaster recovery site at Nazareth, just to make sure that we have another site just in case something goes wrong. So the news and the radio guys are still operating from Nazareth. And others who did not necessarily needed to come to the office were presenting and are still presenting from their homes. So we limited the number of people that were in the offices. And every time when there was an incident or suspicion of an infection, we did follow the guidelines that were given. And that's why we've been able to consistently give South Africans the news that they need and provided the platforms to NGOs and other stakeholders in government to be able to have those briefings, which were critical for South Africans to know what is happening. But I do want to thank the SABC employees and management for the sterling work that they've done during this trying time.
Thank you very much, sir. I'm now going to switch off my video so that I can get closer to the screen to read the questions that are in the chat box. And then just give me a second. I'm still here. I'll just need to get closer to the screen. Thank you. The first question and comment comes from Trevor, who says, inform, educate, and entertain millions of South African people. Lift the game on education, the value chain, and platforms. How do entrepreneurs get involved?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. When I was basically giving my introductory remarks, I highlighted the revenue gaps, which are as a result of the situation we find ourselves. And I'm saying, if this is going to be our new normal, what is it that the innovators and entrepreneurs can put to the table and put forward and propose to us to help us bridge those gaps? And the revenues are in decline in general for your normal advertising, because people are now consuming content using other platforms. And I'm saying the challenge we have is that, for example, if you look at YouTube, the bigger percentage of advertising that happens there leaves the country. And also when you look at the numbers that we have as the SABC, I mean, on Ugozi, for example, we have over 7 million listeners. We've got the numbers, but how do we commercialize those numbers? And how can entrepreneurs and innovators help us to be able to account for every listener and be able to sweat these assets in a way that enable us to become financially sustainable and viable and be able to survive the competition that we face? As a public broadcaster, we have a role to play, but at the end of the day, we also need to be as competitive as we should so that we could survive. So it's very hard to teach to entrepreneurs what they must do, but what I thought I should do was to paint a picture of where the gaps are, who has suffered, and what are the losses that we've suffered. And when you look at what is happening as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, there is clearly a new way of working where people must still be productive, efficient, but not being at the offices or in our studios. So that's basically the area where entrepreneurs need to look at and see how they can be of great assistance to us.
Thank you very much, sir. Vincent Mahoka is asking, how do you transform SABC as compared with multi-choice, like your soapies are still relevant given what the multi-choice is offering currently? And I always personally get worried when we only use one benchmark and not say, how do we benchmark ourselves? So I want to expand on what Vincent is saying, to say, how do we benchmark what the SABC does? You have already alluded to how YouTube is doing things differently.
Multi-choice is not the only competition that we have. Other digital platforms are competing for the same number of listeners and viewers that we want. So we don't only look at multi-choice. And that's why when you look at our digital strategy that we've put together, we talk about an SABC that is everywhere for everyone. And the role that the free-to-air plays in the country, like South Africa, is very important. And my view is, and this is the shared view, the strategy that we put together should be able to help us to have an identity as the SABC, as a public broadcaster, be able to drive costs down while driving revenues up. And the truth of the matter is, if you look at the numbers that we have, it's certainly way above what some of these competitors that I've touched on have. The key thing for us is to be able to commercialize that and be able to have our own platform. I mean, if you look at Uzalo, for example, there's over 200,000 people that watch Uzalo on YouTube. Can you imagine if those people were viewing and watching Uzalo in our own SABC specific OTT platform? There we could be able to advertise and draw maximum returns from that advertising revenue. So the truth of the matter, there's a whole lot more that the SABC can do because of who we are and the coverage and that we have as the public broadcaster.
Thank you very much. Let me take you to the Limpopo province. The question is, and the statement, it's my name is Malitelo Manenji Bosman in Tanin, Limpopo province. The SABC as a public broadcaster has been for years talking about empowering content creators in smaller provinces. We have been pitching, but nothing materializes as the corporation moves from one crisis to the next. Where does the SABC stand now with regard to commissioning content from the regions?
Thank you for the question. I mean, in terms of our license, as it comes with certain conditions that we need to have diversity and relevance in all the provinces, in all the languages. And as the SABC, we continue to try to cover all provinces. So of course, you know, the question is, we've been moving from one crisis to the other. But if you look at the SABC in the last, I'll say 10 to 18 months, we the most stable entity as the SABC, and it talks to the numbers. If you look at us becoming number one 24-hour news channel, talks to the credibility of our news and the hard work by our employees. Before COVID-19, we were looking very good to break even in about 18 to 24 months. And unfortunately, because of the challenges that I've raised or tabled here, we are now going to have a revenue gap of 1.5 billion rand. So I think from the question that you've asked, it's more of an operational matter, but from where we're sitting as a board, adhering to our mandate and complying with the conditions of our license in terms of diversity and having presence in the provinces, it's important. And you would have seen that there's new programs that we're having now that are happening in a number of other provinces that we're not getting the attention that it's necessary.
Thank you very much for that response. This next question, it looked like it's operational, but I think it's not. And Zondo says, thank you, Ndate Sichaba and Ndate Bongusuma. Let us be frank. SABC has been losing business through failing to introduce or move fast in digitization. With COVID-19 requiring faster intervention, what practical steps is SABC taking to mitigate these losses? You have just alluded to more than 1 billion loss, and the PFMA is not helping you either. That's Nkuleleko Zondo.
Thank you for the question. I mean, when we came to the board, we had to put together a turnaround strategy, get the right leadership in place with the prerequisite skills for the SABC to be able to be sustainable and to deliver on its mandate. So one of the key things that I kept on touching on is the whole digital migration, which has been delayed for years. And there's about, over 4 million households that are still dependent on the analog for them to get the content. And as the SABC, we are of the view that we need to play more active role in actually helping with the migration, whether to DTH or DTT. And it is important for us as we move that nobody is left behind, so that at the end of the day, we can be able to cover those households. The other key thing is, how do we use innovation technology as the SABC? I've touched on us having our own OTT platforms. I mean, you would have seen that we've got, for example, a news app. We also have to optimize that app and do more in that app. Currently, it covers news, but there's a lot more we can do. We can also add advertising channels in that area. One of the key things that we're also looking forward to do is coming up with more compelling channels as we migrate to different platforms, so that we can, for example, have a dedicated sport channel, which will enable us to flight and commercialize all the rights that we have from a sporting point of view. We've now launched an education channel, which when you look at it through partnership, we can be able to assist with the situation of COVID-19, making sure that our learners, students are able to get the content and get the lessons and the lectures that they need during this time. So our future really is in us being able to use technology in a way that benefits the SAPC and makes us available and enable us to meet our mandate. But at the same time, we have to really drive the cost down. And some of the things that have resulted from COVID-19 has actually highlighted low-hanging fruit in terms of other areas where we can make changes, effective changes, to make sure that we are able to generate the revenues that are necessary for us to do our work.
Okay, thank you very much. I think your message is very loud and clear that entrepreneurs have an opportunity to look at the gaps that they see within the SABC and come up with solutions to be able to plug those gaps and not necessarily just rely on SABC say, here is a problem that we are trying to solve. It belongs to all, and anybody who's an entrepreneur can step up and come closer. I move on to the conversation, the question to Ulwazi Mzwana. Ulwazi said, what has the SABC done to prevent the fruitless and irregular expenditure flagged by the AG? Also, those accused of graft and the financial mess being brought to book.
Thank you for the question. I mean, you will recall that whenever we went to Parliament, we spoke about legacy and governance issues that we needed to deal with. And those legacy and governance issues emanate from the Public Protector's report, which is binding on our side. It also comes out of the SIU investigation that have highlighted some of the things that may have gone wrong at the SABC. We've also done our own internal forensic investigations as the SABC. And we've been able to deal with over 139 cases that were coming out of those reports and those processes. And we are holding people accountable. And in terms of some of the monies that we need to recover, we are in court in litigation with a number of players that are implicated on the things that may have gone wrong in the past. So we are in court with the help of the SIU and the National Prosecuting Authority to try and recover those monies. And we've also been able to attract, talent, credible South Africans to come work for the SABC who've got the prerequisite skills really to plug the gaps that we may have had as the entity. And like I've touched on the point that a lot has shifted and changed in broadcasting, and as the SABC, we've stayed the same and we've struggled actually to move with time. And this also talks to regulations, because some of the regulations have not shifted and moved with time. In terms of how sports rights are procured, in terms of the mass scale regulations, and a number of other things like your TV licenses. If you look at what the SABC gives South Africans, 18 radio stations, 5 channels, for 265 rands, it's really not fair if you look at what we've been able to do and cover. So in a nutshell, that's what we've done. We've cleaned up the place. We're now focusing on revenue generation. We have a strategy that is guiding us. We've got a team in place, and we have a board that is committed in really making a difference. You would have seen some of the things that have been said about how well we've covered the last elections in terms of the credibility. You've seen us becoming #1 in the 24-hour news channel. You've seen us really doing our work well during this trying time. We've received comment from how our journalists are out there doing their work in spite of the risk and the challenge that we face in the country.
Thank you very much. I think Zenith Santos enjoyed that response from you, and she was nodding her head and smiling. That is fantastic. Let's get now to our current reality. Sandile Nkosi is saying, why has the why has the news coverage and reporting on the SABC not focused on the survivors of the COVID-19, in other words, recoveries, and putting emphasis on using the methods that enable such recovery so that those could be recommended?
Part of the objectives that we set for ourselves as the SABC was that we were going to ensure that we monitor and evaluate and report on the overall response to the crisis by our government. And at the same time, by us doing that, we'll also make sure that we support government efforts, and whatever we do must be aligned with the guidance coming from government, so that we don't contradict or cause confusion. Because if you look at how delicate the pandemic situation, how it's handled in the country, it was very important for us to adhere to certain guidelines. But of course, if there are gaps that you are identifying, I'm sure my CEO, the executive team is listening, and of course we'll look at what can be done without, of course, interfering with the independence of the editorial decision. Because at the end of the day, the editors must decide which stories are worth covering, and as the board, we can't interfere with it. But of course, if there are gaps, I'm sure we'll look into that and see how best we do our work better in a way that will cover all areas that needs to be covered.
Thank you very much. This one is from Nzondo. Also looking at the broadcaster that are prospering, majority of the talent that are achieving results there were once at SABC. Can't we keep or attract more talent? I think you have addressed that, but I think it's important to re-hit it again around what is the success around attracting talent and keeping that talent at the SABC.
Thank you for the question. I mean, one of the key things that we set for ourselves as the board was to make sure that we attract the best, credible, and talented people with the prerequisite skills that are necessary for them to do their jobs. We've been able, for example, to fill all the critical vacancies. And if you look at people that have joined us, are people that have got a wide range of experience that is necessary for us as the SABC to be able to drive the digital migration that we need to do, transform our business and our processes, and become financially sustainable. So that's one. But secondly, we are putting systems in place for our employees to feel supported, and those that need to be developed, that they are developed and given support and tools to be effective in doing their work. Of course, the retention at the SABC is very good. I mean, the average number of years that our people have is about 10 to 15 years. That's the average in terms of at the levels, attrition level at the SABC. So people tend to stay longer with the SABC. But of course, we've got to have that mix in terms of attracting the new skills and the new talent, which we are busy with, and we've been able to fill quite a number of vacancies. And we accept that as the public broadcaster, our competitors will hunt from the SABC. And when we lose people, it's not always good. It's not always also bad, because sometimes those people go there with the learnings and the experience that they would have acquired from the SABC, and we're able to get them back. And when they come back, they may have been exposed to other environments and other ways of working, and it enrich the SABC.
Thank you very much, sir. Sometimes that type of turnover is good so that new talent and new blood can come in. Reverend Ngwenya is making a statement and then a question to you at the end. Says we have one better than OTT called DB, which is digital mobile broadcasting, a digital broadcasting signal sent to mobile phones. No airtime, no data needed to consume content. It's the revenue solution you need to keep money within the borders. Are you ready to meet with us, board chair? That's Reverend Ngwenya.
What I can say, partnerships is one of the key pillars of our strategy. So we are looking at partnering with a number of other players who may have other competencies that we may not have, and combining our expertise as the SABC and what we're good at will really help us look into those things. So certainly we are open to those kind of arrangements that can help us leapfrog ourselves forward by leveraging other expertise that are already out there.
Thank you very much. Sichaba Morojelo is saying, it's one thing to step forward and propose and do stuff. But the question is, what is the appeal process if one rejects a proposal?
I'm sure that becomes a little bit more operational. I wouldn't want as a chair to get too much involved in proposals and deals. That's how other people got it wrong. But if you feel that there was no proper feedback, because my view will be, if something is rejected, they will give you a sense of where you missed the plot in terms of what was expected. Of course, I cannot also expect that every proposal that gets proposed, the fact that it's called a proposal means you propose, it might meet what we need, but some of them you may find that they don't necessarily align with what we are prioritizing at that time. But certainly, I'm sure the executives are listening and they will improve the kind of feedback that they get and how they evaluate things. It always gets communicated that this is what we're looking for. These are the things that need to be in place. And if that is not in place, of course, they may reject certain proposals. But it is more of an operational matter. I wouldn't really want to dwell much on that.
Thank you very much. Sometimes it's always easy to cut leadership down when they make mistakes, and we forget to compliment them and praise them in public when they do good. So let's take Desiree Chauke. Desiree says, I work for the SABC, and it's truly been a trying time balancing the passion for your work and delivering a quality news service with the attendant anxieties about your own personal health. The decisive leadership of both the chairman and the executive news head have helped to ease the process. Quite a nice compliment there coming from somebody who works for the SABC, and kudos to you, Chair, as well as the leadership that is there.
Thank
I'll
you.
Move on. Okay. I'll move on to Tabisho. Tabisho says, the SABC keeps on getting bailouts from the Treasury at infinitum. Is it ever going to get a qualified, reliable board that can take it to the new horizon as a public broadcaster and carry out its mandate?
Thank you for the question. Let me clarify something. That the last time, other than the 3.2 billion rand that we got as the SABC has not received any bailout from government in the last 10, 15 years. What they got was a government guarantee, I would say maybe in 2009, 2008, somewhere there. And that money was paid back within record time. So this notion that SABC always gets bailout is not correct. Because in the last 15 years, we've never received any bailout other than the 3.2 that we got. And that 3.2 bailout that we got was after the analysis that was done, for example, by the public protector, which have highlighted the remedial action that were recommended, that we've implemented that in full. It was after the intervention by Parliament that discovered things that may have gone wrong at the SABC, our own forensic investigation and the SIU. So that gap that was identified needed a financial injection, a recapitalization, which was necessary for the SABC because of poor management and how things were done in the last, I'll say, 10 years at the SABC. So the notion that we always get bailout, if you compare SABC with all the other SOEs, we've never received a bailout in the last 10 years other than the last one that we got now. The one we got in the 2009, 2008 was a government guarantee, which was paid back. So that is not correct. The second thing, the question around qualified board. If you look at what this board that I'm part of has been able to achieve, for the first time, SABC becomes #1 in the news space. That talks to the credibility of the news, the independence of our official and of our news, and our journalists and our news people are working. That shows you that there is something looking positive there. If you look at even the Auditor General opinion of the SABC, we've driven down the irregular expenditures, we've driven down the losses. If you look at, we took it from R1 billion loss down to 700 and something million. The last time we took it down to about 480 something. And if you look at the losses, even on those areas, talks to sports rights, which we've actually been able to fix, because there's a number of things that were done in the past that were not commercially benefiting SABC the way they should. So the board that we're part of and the board that we have is capable. If you look at the leadership that we have from CEO down to the lower levels of our employees, we've got committed, dedicated SABC employees who are working hard, who are leading decisively and leading with integrity. So the truth of the matter is there is a change, and everybody that wants really to be very observant and honest, there is a change in the SABC. It is the most stable SOE if you look at it, if you look at where our body is and what we've been able to achieve.
Thank you very much, sir. Sometimes the questions come when I'm thinking, no, this is just an opinion, maybe operational. But then the way that it ends says, no, the chair must talk to this. So Sandile Ngosi says, why has the SABC not focused and followed up on the Madagascar cure for the COVID-19 as an alternative for the cure thereof, or even the expert investigation thereof? Does that mean the SABC regards the European solutions or cure more than those of African origin?
Thank you for the question. I mean, what the SABC has done, and I touched on this, that we have to change our normal programs, and which I call displacement of our normal programs, to make room for experts to come talk and debate different options. And it is not for the SABC to choose whether the Madagascar solution or cure is right or wrong, but this is for the SABC to create a platform for experts to come and advocate and debate and guide us as citizens. So it's not for the SABC to choose whether Madagascar cure or Western cure is the one that needs to work. So that's not the SABC role. But secondly, we've created such opportunities and not being able to do our normal programming for government to also have an opportunity to address South Africans and engage South Africans on the number of these options. So it is not for the SABC to decide which direction to go or to take, but for us is to create the platform and ensure that the experts are given opportunities to be able to guide how we go about dealing with this pandemic.
There I am trying to get closer to where I need, and then I put my screen on. So anyway, let me read the conversation. This question from Thengiwe Msibi. Thengiwe says, my name is Thengiwe Msibi. How is SABC as a public broadcaster influencing and empowering the lives, especially the young generations? Most of the productions that have been published have potential to mitigate the behaviors of the citizens of South Africa. But the question is, do we have programs and soapies, in bracket, especially because people tune in daily to follow soapies that influence people positively? And then I include my own and say young people specifically.
Thank you for the question. I mean, when I was talking about the value chain, I said producers, content creators, artists, a number of people who are part of our value chain. As the SABC, we expect that creativity to come from our people because they know what is necessary and they know the gaps. And I agree that as the SABC, we've got the reach and the influence through our channels and our platforms to be able to drive the right messaging and influence young South Africans in a right and a positive way to create a new culture of hardworking, responsible citizens. So, but at the end of the day, it is what people pitch or come to present to us as proposals, because we rely on the content and the creativity that comes from those that supply us with such. So we are doing our best, but if there are gaps, I'm sure the entrepreneurs that are listening, the producers and content creators that are listening can see that maybe there is a gap somewhere, and we are certainly going to look into how best we use those programs to drive the messaging and to make sure that we become the influencers as aligned with our mandate, which is really to inform, educate, and entertain.
Go again. I was muted. Thank you very much. Talking about the gaps, there's a language gap here that Mesh Mulauti talks to. Mesh says, it's been about 26 years of democracy, but I still find that the Tsonga language is still marginalized. Only Televa in Tsonga ended up being suspended. Why was that? In terms of section 6.4 and 5.1 of the Constitution, Tsonga is one of the 11 official languages, and all languages must enjoy parity of esteem and must be treated equally.
Certainly, I agree that all languages must be treated equally. And the truth of the matter is, if you look at our array of platforms that we have, sometimes people want everything to be on TV. And it is not possible to have all 11 languages on TV because you only have so many hours. That's why we have 18 radio stations, and a lot of these radio stations are based on regional languages. You've got Mhlobo, covering, Xhosa language. You've got Kosi. You've got other channels, other radio stations. So I do want South Africans to also accept the fact that we may not be able to fit every language on TV because of the limitations that are there. Let's also look at what other platforms we have provided as the SABC to make sure that we cover as many languages as possible. We also have digital platforms and other things that can really be utilized to cover that. But of course, we'll continuously look at improving within the limited space to see how best we can address some of these things. That's why when I was touching on the need for the fast tracking of migration, if we can get more channels, for example, say, for example, we have a dedicated sport channel, which means we can then make some space in SABC 1, 2, and 3, because then the sport will be on the sport channel. We've touched on and we've now launched an education channel, which means all the educational programs can then be migrated to an educational channel. So it is a journey, colleagues, because we can't fix everything at once, but what is important is that we have a plan, we have a strategy, we have the skills, the expertise, and the committed workforce that is willing to walk this journey with us. So we will get there, but there's certain practical limitations that we have in terms of the channels and what you can do on a TV in a day.
Talking about plans, engaged people are a competitive asset. Of course, disengaged people can take you down the wrong path. Zanath Santos is asking, do you currently have robust plans that are aimed at succession planning, noting what we have said earlier when we spoke about talent that you attract and you retain?
Thank you for the question. One of the things that we really focus on when it comes to succession planning is transformation and diversity of skills, education, and experience. I mean, I reported last time when I was we were presenting to the portfolio committee that women representation at the SABC is sitting at 51%. So for us, the agenda for getting women to occupy managerial and senior position at the SABC is one of our priorities. And people say they aspire to 50-50. We're already at 51, and we will continue to push that one hard. And if you look at even from the top three, we've also tried to make sure that we are diverse. I mean, because SABC is for everyone. It's not only for a particular class or grouping or race. So the demographics of the country are clearly visible when you look at the SABC and how we've gone about recruiting and appointing people. So HR is working on plans around, for example, making sure that we have an operational model that supports high performance, develop those that may be struggling, but at the same time, make sure that we become a high performance business. And it's the only way we can survive the competition that we're facing if we are competitive and we're doing what we do in the most efficient manner. And I'm comfortable because we do have very hardworking, committed employees at the SABC. When you look at the future of the SABC, it is really looking positive because we've got people who are giving their best and working diligently to make sure that we remain true to our mandate.
I think Ulwazi concurs and says it's good to see that the SABC has got that thing. I found that quite interesting. You either have it or you don't. Says it's good that you've got that thing. Moving on to Reverend Ngwenya. Following up, I know you did say that you don't want to go operational, but Reverend Ngwenya is following up. Says, can the chair advise on the next steps I can follow to make sure that our company can do a board presentation on DBM that he spoke about? So I guess he wants to come straight to the board. If you can just assist us there, Chair. What's the process?
Process and procedures, it's what get other people in jail and end up in Zondo Commission. So the truth of the matter is such a proposal will have to be presented and submitted to the executives. The board, in terms of the DAF, the delegation of authority, only get involved on certain decisions and certain deals. Of course, we've provided strategic guidance in terms of how we should be working and what we should be doing to turn around the SABC. But I wouldn't really support anybody coming straight to the board, because it does undermine our executives, who are the people who are operational and running the SABC business on day-to-day. So what I will do, I will give at the end, I will give them I'll give the details of maybe who to contact at an executive level, and you can also go to our website. Some of these things are there, and you use that channel. But coming straight to the board for a proposal is something that can never be supported, because it will undermine our procedures and protocols.
Okay, thank you very much, Reverend Ngwenya, for the question and the clarification, Chair. James Koza is making an interesting point. Says SABC is an institution that is struggling to get public acknowledgement and support because of over-reliance on historical methodologies. How are you going to innovate and air educational and appealing content? And then concludes by saying, I sympathize with the pressure that your board is in. What is the strategy of winning the masses back? Thank you very much. That's James Koza.
Thank you, James, for the question. I mean, if you look at the audiences that we've regained, that's why we've become #1 in the news, 24-hour news. So it's about the number that we've gained as the SABC. Of course, we are also losing other audiences in terms of other platforms. And that's why I spoke about an SABC that is everywhere for everyone, and being available in different formats and different platforms. And of course, when you look at the importance of content, I mean, in broadcasting, you know, without compelling and quality and interesting content, you have no future, because revenue will follow interesting content. If you don't have interesting content, you're doing repeat strategy, and you're not really having a content that will attract people and keep them interested, you will not be able to survive. So content and platform is one of our key pillars of our strategy. So it's something that we are so focused on, and you will see in the next few months some of the new things that will be coming to show you that we are serious about platforms, we are serious about compelling content. And already when you see some of the numbers, it's already showing that SABC is on the growth path.
Thank you very much. I'll now take it through. There are a couple of things that entrepreneurs that come on this platform always look to. If one is looking at what the COVID-19 impact has been, particularly to the other media players, like you said, revenue is down because advertisers have shifted. As things pick up, what will be your advice for somebody that wants to help you pick up your revenue? What areas will be low-hanging fruit for any entrepreneur to engage the SABC on?
Thank you. I think anybody who wants to be relevant and find a niche in a particular industry, they need to study that industry and understand some of the opportunities. I mean, for an example, when you look at a soapy, let's say Uzalo is playing, advertisers want to be part of the storyline. So that, because people have a tendency to jump the ad or skip the ad. So we need people to look at how do we meet the needs and the new demands of our advertisers. And through innovation, that through things like your product placement on those billboards, you'll see when the soap is playing, you see a billboard advertising a particular brand or a particular product. So how many people are doing that? And how many people are writing scripts that have got a storyline that covers certain things that needs to be addressed in the country? So to be honest, I think this COVID-19 is going to provide an opportunity for a reset for everyone, because anyone who thinks they can go back to the old ways before COVID-19, those people are lost. And anybody who thinks SABC can go back to its previous glory, like people normally say, then it means we're not moving forward, because a lot has changed and we need to be moving forward and leveraging the new innovation and the new ways of doing things. So at the end of the day, it's about studying the industry, understanding the gaps that I've touched on, and then saying what is happening elsewhere and what is it that advertisers are looking for, and how can we then make sure that we provide for that.
Okay. Mesh is following up with a question just to check. What are the social challenges learned by SABC through COVID-19? I know we are still in the middle of it, but there might be some things that are beginning to emerge that the SABC has learned, and just wants you to tease those out.
We haven't done the analysis yet because we are in the middle of the pandemic as we speak. But I'm sure once we are at the logical point, we'll be able to draw lessons and be able to address some of those things. But in the main, I mean, when you look at what COVID-19 has done, it has really exposed the inequalities that we have in our country. I mean, even the challenges around which schools are ready, which ones are not ready. If we don't, as a country, address these things in a manner that bridges or addresses the inequality, the very same crisis can widen that gap and make it worse for South Africans. And I always say this, that if we leave poor people with absolutely nothing to eat, we are actually creating a problem for us, because then they will eat the rich. And we cannot afford that. So we've got to be finding ways to bridge the gap and take everybody forward and make sure that, you know, we support each other. And this is why the SABC will prioritize launching an educational channel during this pandemic, because we felt that education is one of the key tools that is very transformational. That if you give people education, you empower them, they stand a better chance to do right and to do the things that will really transform themselves and transform their families. So as the SABC, will continue doing what is right to really help South Africa move forward by adhering to our mandate and also creating more platforms for people to be informed, educated, and to be empowered.
Talking about education, which is quite important at this particular time, can you give me a view on language and education? The education that you talk about, is it English? Is it across all the different languages? If you can just indulge me there.
So the channel that we have, we are in partnership with the Basic Education Department. And then we've had deals with universities. So it depends really on the needs of the department and those universities that we are in partnership with. So we are guided by them in terms of what needs to be done. And of course, we are respecting the language policies of the country and making sure that all the official languages are somehow covered in one way or the other. Like I've said, when you look at the 18 radio stations that we have, that covers quite a vast number of languages.
Like that. You know, sometimes we just ask chairs, what keeps you up at night? And we think they're out there solving our problems. There are certain things that you must be proud of at a personal level that the organization that you chair has achieved. That's not necessarily in the public domain, that you just smile about and say, this is something that I would like to share with people that you never get an opportunity to share. What has made you particularly excited about what's going on at SABC at a personal level?
Thank you for the question. One of the things that I always think about, taking the opportunity to be the chair of the SABC was the biggest career risk that I've ever taken in my life. If you look at my profile and where I've been, it could have gone really south, because you're going into a troubled area, troubled waters, and you know, South Africans are not very forgiving. They will forget that when we got there, the thing was in a mess. They will blame you for the difficulties that are there. So to have had an opportunity to be part of something and really to contribute to my country, I take it as my little Robben Island. I was not there when the country was liberated, but as professionals, as we avail ourselves and go and make a contribution, it's a way of making the country a better country for all. The other thing that for me always humbles me is the level of commitment by some of our employees at the SABC. I mean, with all the disarray, all the wrong things that have happened, there are those SABC employees who continuously, diligently did their work and provided their skills without necessarily worrying themselves about what was happening around them. So they were never deterred or discouraged by the level of corruption, favoritism, and victimization that they were subjected to. That, for me, always humbled me to see that we still have South Africans who go further and beyond their call of duty to make a difference and to do their work with diligence. We've had our people, some of them being threatened, their lives threatened, but they were never, discouraged or deterred from doing what is expected of them. So for me, to see the change and see our people supporting what we're doing is humbling, and I'm thankful to the SABC employees and the support that we get from a number of stakeholders. I mean, even giving us this platform where we can update you, tell you what we're doing, what we're struggling with. I take it as support that we need. And it is important for every South African to really support the public broadcaster, because without an SABC, can you imagine what would have happened with this pandemic? Look at the role that SABC has played to raise awareness, create the platform that was necessary for South Africans to be educated about it. It is very important. And I really want to encourage South Africans to continue paying their TV licenses, continue supporting the SABC, because it is the future, and it can make that difference in where our country goes.
Yeah, thank you so much. One of the things that the name does not appear, but it's a number, but they make a very important point to say, let's just make sure that we are in the moment and we are relevant currently. It says, please enforce COVID-19 regulations with some of your SOPs, and just making sure that people can see that things are current, and then they can see how it goes through. And then Uhlengiwe, just to remind Uhlengiwe, you post your questions, everybody is muted. That's how we conduct the conversations. But makes a very important point to say, we would like to encourage the SABC to look at spicing up the entertainment industry with solutions to most of the ailments that are facing this country. And Ulwazi says, thank you, Mr. Makhathini. Indeed, the SABC is on good hands. Just listening to you speak keeps one going to work and feeling good about what is happening at the SABC. And from my side, I would like to thank you for the engagement and coming on the Empower Entrepreneurs platform to come and engage and update us on what is going on at the SABC and what gets you excited. Because when you are just the receiver, sometimes you want to know who are the people that are behind the that's happening at the SABC. I'd like to thank Mr. Bongumusa Makhathini, Chair of Board of Directors at SABC, for indulging us this evening. And also a big thank you to everyone that joined us live via Zoom, as well as the EmpowerWorks digital platforms. This has been an Empower Entrepreneurs digital conversation, a COVID-19 discussion hosted by EmpowerWorks. And for the entrepreneurs, as I said, that joined us, really appreciate you taking the time through whichever platform you enjoyed us. Thank you very much, sir. And I wish you all the best. Keep the it.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.